This is 7.1, lesson 1. For this lesson, we are going to use the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so a right triangle is a triangle with a 90-degree angle. The Pythagorean theorem only works on right triangles. A relationship that exists among the sides of a right triangle. So the two sides that make up the right angle are called legs, and the side across from the right angle is called the hypotenuse. Okay, so in this picture, our right angle is angle C. Okay, and the two sides that create that right angle are our legs. And the side across from our right angle, it doesn't touch our right angle, is called the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always the longest side. Okay, so looking at the pictures below, okay, so we have our first right triangle, it's very little. This side length of 1 and this has a side length of 1. If I were to create a square out of those, this third side length, creating a square, is equal to adding these two squares together. So in this triangle, this square plus this square is going to equal this whole big square. Same thing here, this square plus this square is going to equal our whole big square. So here's our Pythagorean theorem. Our formula is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are our legs and c is our hypotenuse. So if I square both of my legs, so my legs are a and b, and I add them together, it's going to equal the square of my hypotenuse, letter C. This theorem is useful to find missing sides of a right triangle. So looking at some example problems. Letter A. We see that our two sides that create our angle, okay, actually are numbered 9 and 12. So those are our letters A and B. You can switch A and B as long as they're on the legs. It doesn't matter. The one that's important that you get correct is letter C. Letter C is always across from that right angle, and it's always our longest side. So we're going to start with our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we're going to fill in our numbers. 9 is a, so we're going to have 9 squared, plus b is 12, so we have 12 squared, equals c squared. 9 squared is 81, plus 12 squared is 144. Again, it's going to equal c squared. 81 plus 144 is 225, equals c squared. Now c is not by itself, c is squared. So we learned last unit, in order to get rid of a squared, we actually have to square root, and we're going to square root both sides. The square root of 225 is 15, and our units is inches. Now this unit, you can use calculators, so if you would like to calculate your squares or your square roots using your calculator, that is perfectly okay. Our next problem. Again, our sides that make up our right angle are A and our B, so we're going to say 8 is A, and our unknown side is B. We know C has to be this longest side that is across from our right angle. So again, we have our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a is 8, and b we do not know, so we leave it as b squared, and c is 24. 8 squared is 64, so plus b squared, and 24 squared is 576. Now our goal is to figure out what b is, and we have to get b by itself. So the first thing we actually have to get rid of is our 64, and we're going to subtract 64 in order to do this. So that we have b squared equals 512. In order to get b by itself, we're going to square root both sides. When I square root 512, I get this number right here, and our directions say to round to the nearest tenth. So b is going to be about, and that's an about sign, 22.6 meters. Letter C. Our two sides that we know are next to the right angle, so those are A and B. And our side opposite our right angle is letter C. So again, we have our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we're going to plug our numbers in. A is 24, so I have 24 squared, plus b is 18, so I have 18 squared, equals c squared. 24 squared is 576, plus 18 squared is 324, equals c squared. We're going to go ahead and add those numbers together to get 900 equals c squared. But again, we need to get c by itself, so our last step is to square root both sides. When we square root 900, I get 30 yards equals c. Letter D, find the missing length of a triangle with a leg of 17 centimeters and a hypotenuse of 20 centimeters. So we know our legs are either A or B, they're interchangeable, but our hypotenuse is always C. So in this case, I do not know what letter B is. So we have our formula, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and we're going to plug in our numbers. A is 17, so I have 17 squared, plus I don't know what b is, so we have b squared equals 20 squared. 17 squared is 289, plus b squared equals 400. We want to get b by itself, so we need to subtract 289 on both sides. So I get b squared equals 111. We're going to square root both sides. And this one again is an approximation, so the square root of 111, I get this decimal, which is about 10.5 centimeters. Now our last two, we are trying to determine if these measurements create a right triangle, and we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem. We know the Pythagorean theorem works for right triangles. So if I were to plug in these numbers into my Pythagorean theorem and it works, it is a right triangle. But if it does not work, it is not a right triangle. So the measures of three sides of a triangle are 5 inches, 12 inches, and 13 inches. Okay, so we know C is always our longest length, so 13 has to be our C. Our A and B are interchangeable, so I'm just going to say 5 is A and 12 is B. Now be careful, it will not always go in the order A, B, C when I give you the numbers. So we're going to plug them into our formula. We're going to have 5 squared plus 12 squared equals 13 squared. 5 squared is 25 plus 144 equals, and 13 squared is 169. When I add 25 and 144, I get 169. Since I have 169 on both sides, this works. So yes, this is a right triangle. Then our last problem, we have 4 feet, 7 feet, and 5 feet. Again, we need to identify C first. C is our largest measurement, so 7 is our C. And then A and B are interchangeable. We're going to plug these in. I have 4 squared plus 5 squared, and we're going to see if that equals 7 squared. 4 squared is 16, plus 5 squared is 25, and 7 squared is 49. 16 plus 25 is only 41. So I have 41 on the left and 49 on the right, so this does not work. So no, this is not a right triangle.